really like to see the rest of you that you're actually participating in our meeting.
You need to get up closer to the mic.
And
Okay, now I'm closer. Wow. Okay, now I'm closer to the mic. So everybody online, turn your cameras on so we can see you.
to that point, Mayor, I'll just note that for our folks that are joining online, we see you and we want you to be able to fully participate. So if you want to say anything at any point, speak up, raise your hand, put a comment in the chat. But if you put a comment in the chat, we may just turn to you and ask you to speak it yourself. Okay, but we want you to feel like you can participate fully.
Thank you, Andrew.
You're welcome.
Well, let's just take care of introductions so we know who's in the room. And then Rosie will read through everybody that's online. So go ahead. We'll start with you, Rosie.
Rosie with WFRC.
Jordan Chandler with WFRC.
Joe Smoka, COG and the Immigration Canyon.
Jim Harvey, Weber County.
Beth Holbrook, Utah Transit Authority.
Ryan Bars, Utah Division of Air Quality.
Andrew Gruber with WFRC.
And Mark Shepard, Clearfield City.
Wayne Benyon, WFRC staff.
Kevin Crowmeyer, Air Quality Board. Ben Hewitt with UDOT.
Doyle Gerard, Lake Point Council.
Ted Knowlton, WFRC.
Andrea Olson, UDOT Planning.
Lila Rosenfield, WFRC.
Marion Florence, WFRC.
Byron Head, WFRC.
Ben Withrich with WFRC.
And Rosie, who's online?
Okay, we have Kevin Van Tassel, Andrea Pearson, Ann Granado, Carolyn Lundberg, Dan Adams, Hugh Van Wagenen, Ivan Marrero, Jennifer Elskin, Josh Van Jura, Kevin Jepson, Leaf Elder, Mike Wykers, Miranda Jones Cox, Mayor Natalie Hall, Nathan Terpesky. We have resident Steve Van Maren, Rob Dolly, Russ Fox, Shul Bishop, and Mayor Tammy Tran.
Thank you. Is there anybody we missed online? If so, just stick it in the chat and let us know that we missed you. Okay, well, before we proceed further, I put my note on the back sheet so that, you know, the guy sitting next to me wouldn't see it. But we want to congratulate Wayne Benyon. Wayne has completed 30 years with WFRC. Wayne, where else have you worked?
It's too long a time to work anywhere else.
This is pretty much Wayne's entire career. So congratulations, Wayne. Please join me in a round of applause for Wayne.
Thank you.
I didn't tell him I was going to put him on the spot and embarrass him. What's it like to have worked here for 30 years? What's the what's the thing that you remember after 30 years?
Variety. There's been a lot of growth and variety, and so that's kept my interest, and grateful to be a part of an excellent team.
We're lucky to have you. Thank you very much, Wayne.
And Mayor, if I might just really briefly note that Wayne is the model of a dedicated public servant. As I think you all know, Wayne is not one to seek the spotlight or glory. He is just working day in and day out to make sure that we're operating efficiently, and has been always dedicated to serving our region and all of your communities. So Wayne, thank you very much.
Thank you, Wayne. Thank you, Andrew. That brings us to the minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting?
Second.
And a second. Any further discussion on the minutes? All in favor? Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, minutes will stand. On the chair's report, I have just a couple of items. First, I'd like to note that after 4 years of extensive effort, the 2023-2020, there's not a 2020, it's a 2023-2050 regional transportation plan was unanimously approved by the WFRC Regional Council at their last meeting. In conjunction with this, the air quality conformity analysis was approved, and the updated travel demand model and population and employment forecasts will be posted on the WFRC website. And second, I want to invite Andrea Olson, UDOT Planning Director, to give a brief update on the Transportation Investment Fund and the Transit Transportation Investment Fund, the TIF and the TTIF.
Thank you, Mayor, for introducing that. It's such a mouthful to say, and now I don't have to say it. I appreciate that. No, I just am here to hopefully give you a little bit of a reminder on the TIF and TTIF transportation funds that come out of the Department of Transportation. I'm sure you know, but like I said, as a reminder, I think there are 4 different project types that the Transportation Commission funds out of these 2 funds. So out of TIF, we are able to, the Transportation Commission is able to fund highway projects and now active transportation projects that add capacity to the system. And then out of TTIP, the Transportation Commission is able to fund transit projects and first last mile projects. So paved pedestrian or bicycle connections to transit stops or stations, things like that. So with these 4 different project types, we, with the exception of highway, the other 3, so highway, transit, and first last mile, are largely based on nominations. So the main message I want to send today is that we anticipating opening the window for nominations for those projects in late June. And specifically the dates that we are anticipating right now are June 26th through August 31st. There is a website that has a lot of information that I will give you here before I leave, but the nomination process is not very onerous. We try to make it relatively easy to nominate projects. Once we determine that a nominated project is eligible for that kind of funding, we'll come back to the nominating agency to gather data. Local governments and transit districts are able to nominate projects during this nomination window. The one clarification I want to make is that what I am not talking about the Utah Trails Network or the Active Transportation Investment Fund that were both passed during the 2023 legislative session that is specific active transportation funding. It's very exciting. There are other people at UDOT working on that effort, but I'm specifically talking about TIF and TTIF. And so with those, there is a match requirement. There's not a match on highway projects, but on TTIF projects, there's a 30% match requirement. And then on TIF AT projects, there is a 40% match requirement. And in your nomination process, there is the opportunity to just let us know how you intend to meet those match requirements. Like I said, we try to make it a pretty easy lift in terms of nominating a project, and then we'll work with the sponsoring agency to collect the data that we need for those projects to be included on the prioritized list of projects that we then present to the Transportation Commission for future funding opportunities. The website that I mentioned that has a wealth of information is projectprioritization.udot.utah.gov. When the nomination window opens, all the links to the Google Forms for nominating will be located at that website. I'm happy to be a resource for information. You can get in touch with me if you have questions about it. We will be sending out information related to that nominating window, on the 26th of June to let people know that that's available. But I'm happy to answer questions. Andrew, it looks like you may have one or an additional comment.
Not a question,
Oh,
just to
sorry.
echo what you're saying, Andrea. We at WFRC will also send out to all of our communities in our region all the information. So if anybody's like furiously writing down the details, you can, but you don't need to. We're going to send the information out also as a partner to UDOT.
Right, absolutely. We rely heavily on our partners, the MPOs, the AOGs, all the transit districts throughout the state, the League of Cities and Towns, the Association of Counties. We rely on them to help us get this information out to transit districts and local governments so that everybody has access to that information. That website, a link will be in the email that you'll hopefully get several times over. But yeah, it's a great opportunity to be able to, fund projects like this throughout the state. So are there
Awesome.
questions I can answer?
Thank you, Andrea. Any questions for her? Before we let her sit down? Okay.
Can you,
All right.
I might have missed it, but can you just mention that if the point about what projects automatically get prioritized and don't need to have a nomination?
Yes, so highway projects that are in phase one of their respective agencies' long-range plan or regional transportation plan. So for example, WFRC just adopted a new RTP on May 25th. The highway projects in phase one of that plan that are on state highways that are more than $5 million will automatically be included on the input list for the highway projects. And that's the same for the other MPOs throughout the state. And then UDOT has a plan for the rural areas. So they automatically get on the highway list. Transit projects, what we have done in the past is that transit projects in phase one of so one of the issues that we're running into is that this is typically based on the unified plan. We use phase one projects of the unified plan. We're not going to have a unified plan fully ready to go during this nomination window. So we are going to provide information, sufficient that I think any nominating entity will have a good understanding of projects that are already included on there. We can certainly include, projects that are already in phase one of WFRC's RTP that UTA would have on there would already be included in a phase one list. It's just, there's a few more steps to go through this time around just because that unified plan, is based on all of the entities' long-range plans, which haven't necessarily all been adopted yet. So just a few extra steps.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That brings us to our open comment period. Is there anybody online? I don't have anybody here from the public. Is there anybody online? Okay, seeing no public comment, we'll go ahead and move forward. And that takes us to our item number 4, which is the Transportation Improvement Program, the TIP. And I'm going to turn the time over to Ben for a report on the actions we took at the WFRC council meeting and talk to us about additional modifications.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just for our benefit here, just to remember what the TIP is. It's the Transportation Improvement Program. And the Transportation Improvement Program has, well, we're kind of in a unique situation. So today we've got 3 items that we're going to take an opportunity to participate in. The first one, we'll quickly review that action that was taken by the Regional Council, excuse me, on the 25th of May. Then we have a new board to bring before this body here for your review and approval. And then to come before you today also to request a release of the draft 2429 Transportation Improvement Program with its associated air quality conformity analysis for the public review and comment period. But what is the Transportation Improvement Program? It's a 6-year program of highway transit and active transportation projects. 4 years of those 6 years are funded. 2 years are what we refer to as concept development. It covers both of our urban areas. Our urban areas is the Ogden-Layton urban area, goes from Brigham City down to the Salt Lake County. And then there's the Salt Lake West Valley urban area, which goes from Davis County down to Utah County. It has all the projects that are funded with federal funds, also state funded projects, and those local programs that are associated with a regionally significant or a project that's utilizing multiple fund sources. And it's for all the cities, the counties, UDOT and UTA. So it's a pretty healthy document. It's significant. There's about $10+ billion in the TIP this year to go out for public review and comment. We'll get to that in just a minute, but it's a pretty significant document for the Wasatch Front. It'll implement the regional transportation plan or the long range plan. for highway transit and active transportation projects. It'll help us meet the short-range needs, and it provides for the maintenance of our existing system. The tip will have a list of projects that'll have new construction, rehab and maintenance, safety and intelligent transportation system, transit operating and maintenance, pedestrian and bicycle type projects. It represents hundreds of millions of dollars, thousands of jobs, the economic growth and development, the mobility and access along the Wasatch Front, the preservation of life, and of course promotes the quality of life that we're accustomed to. The tip must be financially constrained. It must conform to air quality. It must be reviewed by the public and approved by the regional council. So today, to begin all of our discussion, we had the board modification that took place back in May. This was a board request that was presented to the regional council. They reviewed the information, and a copy of that signed resolution and the projects or a list of the projects is included in your meeting material. If there's no info or if there's any questions, we can review that at this time. Mr. Chair.
Are there any questions for Ben? Okay, then we'll move forward.
Thank you. So then the next item that's pretty exciting, and this is a board modification. We have a fairly healthy board modification before us. About every time we meet, we have a board modification because of the dynamics in each project. There's new projects that all of a sudden we realize there's a need to put it on, or the resources are made available. There's a change in the project scope or the amount of funds in the project. And so we're bringing that information back through the governing bodies for approval. So today, in your meeting materials, you'll have a copy of the resolution, and then there are 4 sheets that identify the projects that we'll review today. That's 14 different projects. So we'll start with the first sheet and move forward. The first 2 projects that we have an opportunity to review are statewide projects. They're in our tip because of part of that's in our area, and so we encompass the whole project. But the Infrastructure Investment Act, or IIJA, that's our current and most recent transportation bill. It authorizes the state to obligate funds for transportation workforce development. Now, this is something the state's done for many, many years. But now that they have the ability through the IIJA to utilize the funds through this program. And so the request is that we, let me jump ahead in just a second, that we put a new program or a new project in the program. This is a $500,000 project, and that's for the employee professional development. Now, the employee development group at UDOT, they propose some targets for this particular project there to strategize the workforce planning, the recruitment, the skill development, knowledge management, career path development, career enhancements and leadership development, and several others. So this is a program that will benefit all of us. There's a lot of cities that have past UDOT employees, but every one of us interact with the UDOT personnel, and we learn from them, and we get well, whatever they get better, we get better too. And so that's a benefit there.
Hey,
The
Ben,
next project,
Ben,
yes,
sorry, on the screen, you've got 500,000. In the materials, it says 600,000. Do we know which is the correct number, just for the record?
I don't have my other table.
Why don't we say it's 600,000, and that way we'll be covered?
We got the table right here. See here. Holy cow. I inserted the wrong table. Oh, that was last meeting. Whew, no wonder. All right. I thought I was really going bad. You're right. It is 600,000. So confession, I'm building this slide this morning at 4 a.m. So sorry about that. It is 600,000. The next board modification that we have, we'll jump through this one here. is one that's pretty exciting here. It's a Way in Motion or a WIM program. This will install Way in Motion detectors throughout the state with various projects that UDOT has. So currently, UDOT has been, for most of the time, UDOT has relied on national default data for vehicle ways and data on old WIM sites, as well as from the motor carrier data and radar units for vehicle classification. It's just been very expensive to upkeep and maintain these because they don't last very long. And so UDOT's using their resources in other ways and finding better ways or less expensive ways to get some of the data. However, there's been a change in federal highways, and they are asking now that UDOT replace and expand their own data collection in the monitoring system. So on there, you can see the different ways that the Way in Motions are collected. The one little diagram here is the one where it's down in the pavement, whereas the cars run over it. It can determine what the weight is, the axle distance, the speed of the vehicle, and we can get a lot of that information that's necessary to help us take care of pavements, as well as improvements to the geometry of the system. So this is a new project, new funding, 4.7+ million is the request. The next project is a project in Salt Lake County. This is in Big and Little Cottonwood Canyons. Beautiful area. A lot of times when we're on our way up, so is everybody else. It was a good idea. And so because of that, because we have such a resource, this past legislative session, the 2023 legislative session, they directed UDOT that UDOT develop projects that would create a mobility hub, that would improve bus shelters and bus stops, that would enhance or implement the tolling facilities, and also enhance the bus system through the area. And so as it's been shared here, on May 25th, Wasatch Front Regional Council approved the 23-2050 Regional Transportation Plan. Among the many important and valuable projects included in the plan are the projects identified in the preferred alternatives of the Little Cottonwood Canyon Environmental Impact Statement. The authorization of funding by the legislature and the approval of the plan allows the above projects to be amended into the 2023-2028 Transportation Improvement Program. So with this project, there will be enhanced bus service, improved bus stops and shelters, tolling and mobility improvements, and that's for both Big and Little Cottonwood Canyon. Now, because of the large amount of interest in the Little Cottonwood Canyon projects, we've asked Josh Van Juren here at UDOT, he's project manager for the environmental study, to talk with us briefly about the study. Josh, are you on?
I am. And thank you for the opportunity. And that was a tremendous job of explaining what the phase one has identified in the final environmental impact study is, but also what's reflected in SB2. Again, it's really enhanced bus service, bus stops at the ski resorts, tolling, and a mobility hub. Total estimated costs for Big and Little Cottonwood for those four elements is $250 million, as shown on the slide. Currently, we have $192 million of that, leaving us about $53 million short of the anticipated bus service and the cost of those amenities. I think it's important to note that yearly operation and maintenance of that bus service is not included in that 250. That is the initial capital outlay.
Perfect. Thank you, Josh.
Could you ask Josh to repeat those four things that they're looking at? so I could write them down?
Absolutely. It was improved and enhanced bus service, bus stops at the resorts, a mobility hub, and tolling infrastructure. And again, that's for both Big Cottonwood and Little Cottonwood combined.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Josh, what's the anticipated timing of the expenditure? You're thinking the same thing. What's the anticipated timing of the expenditure of those funds and the improvements?
So we do anticipate that the record of decision for Little Cottonwood would begin, or the record of decision will be this summer. Tolling will require bus service in Big Cottonwood. That will require an environmental document, most likely a lesser document than an EIS, but we'll have to, of course, consult with our environmental division. And we'll begin the procurement and design of those 4 features immediately and work with the local municipalities, specifically Cottonwood Heights, Alta, Sandy, and all of our other cooperating and participating agencies. We do expect that design and procurement will take approximately 2 years. And so we're optimistically hoping that would mean ski service and those amenities in place in ski season 25-26. So distributed throughout final completion for the expenditures, of course, but final costs expended prior to the start of the 25-26 ski season.
Very good. Thank you, Josh. Yeah, no, go ahead.
I try to come prepared to these meetings, and so I review every project. I'm sure everyone has their own process, but I review each project. I have a 4-question thing I go through for myself. I ask, what's the objective this project's trying to accomplish? Why is that a priority for public dollars? I look at the technical analysis, how it will be accomplished. And then are there any unintended consequences or adverse side effects that need to be mitigated in some way? So I do that for every project. It only takes seconds because it's very apparent. I spent a lot of time on this proposal for the tolling. I cannot come up with clear answers for what's trying to be accomplished, why it's a priority, how will it be accomplished, and mitigating unintended consequences. I've read the EIS, I've attended public meetings, I've asked staff. I cannot come up with clear answers for it. I was wondering if we could ask Josh, would you be willing to kind of answer those 4 questions for the tolling aspect of this proposal?
Absolutely. I'd love to shed some light. I will ask a favor
sorry,
though.
real quickly. When I do it, we're looking at lots of projects. It's literally like bullet points, 1 sentence for each one. Can you just bullet point it for us? What's the objective of the tolling? Why is that a priority? And then how it will be accomplished would be great.
Absolutely. Can I ask one question though? Can you ask the questions individually? Because I did not write them down and I want to make sure I'm providing an answer to the question that was asked. I'm sorry.
Yeah, what's the specific objective we're trying to accomplish by implementing tolling in the canyons?
So the goal of tolling is to reduce the traffic on Big and Little Cottonwood Road by roughly 30%. And 30% was chosen such that it reduces the anticipated 2050 demand for average annual daily traffic down to what a 2-lane mountainous road can handle. So the goal is really to transition people to a transit-based alternative.
And then the second one's, why is that a priority for public dollars?
The reason it's a priority is really to reduce congestion. Improve mobility and reliability travel times associated with going up and down the canyon in those peak periods.
You froze there for a bit, Josh.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just repeat that answer. But don't repeat it like we heard it, because it wouldn't make any sense.
I apologize. Yeah, the goal is really to improve mobility and reliability for the users of those roadways, not only people that are trying to visit the ski resorts, but also backcountry skiers, bird watchers, hikers, because transitioning people to transit will reduce the overall travel time, improving air quality, water quality, but also the canyon visitors experience.
And then how will it be accomplished? How will the toll actually reduce the number of cars in the canyon?
So again, by offering low-cost transit associated with a higher cost to drive your private vehicle, we hope to transition people into transit. The specific methodology would likely be a combination of express lane passes, what you're familiar with on I-15, and most probably a license plate photo capture system in conjunction with the express lane passes.
Sorry, WFRC can tell you I'm kind of a nerd for the technical details. For the how, in transportation planning, there's a number. The elasticity of travel demand is an actual number. The how, I would wonder, is what value did you use and how is that derived?
So we did it is not a financial grade analysis for tolling, but we do have a full report on how we derived that. There was roughly 1,000 people that were surveyed and asked at what point would you start considering transit or make changes to your trip. That dollar value was, we built a bell curve of all those responses, and to achieve a 30% diversion, the dollar value was between $25 and $30. We have said that it will be dynamic tolling. So if everybody embraces transit, that dollar value may need to go down. And of course, the opposite of that is also true, but it is a statistically valid survey that was completed to arrive at that value.
I have a little bit of commentary, if it's okay, Mr. Chair. Let me nominate. The tolling aspect of this, especially that last point, there's a real problem where the traffic, when it's most congested, the reason they use a specific function is there's a chance there could be inelastic travel demand, which happens frequently. So George Washington Bridge, which we know about, it's pretty much inelastic. You can raise the toll $2, $3, $4, $5. Traffic demand doesn't change, because if you have to drive that bridge, you got to drive that bridge. If you're willing to line up in your car starting 6 a.m., I'm with them. I'm lined up at 6 a.m. It's inelastic travel demand. If you're looking at a low-income family going up for the free skiing at Alta at 3 p.m., that's very elastic. So even $1 would discourage them from going. So as I looked at that analysis you're referring to, it doesn't account that at all. Like, it's absent thinking about the dynamic nature of canyon travel. I just feel like there needs a lot more technical analysis. The clarity of what we're trying to accomplish. I understand 2050, we kind of backtrack it in. It's unclear to me why we need to implement that now if we have a 2050 goal. It's very unclear to me why this should be a priority. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I'll make a motion later to pull that funding out of the tip, but those are the points I'd like to make at this time.
Thank you, Kevin. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that I get where you're coming from a little bit on that, Kevin. I think it is difficult to kind of do this because in a strict financial analysis, you're looking to, I don't know, increase your revenue, right? You're really trying to figure out a model that's going to do that. And this is designed to be completely counterintuitive. And it's actually designed to change behavior, right? And yes, there is that certain inelasticity, as you used the term, in terms of wanting to do something, but there is also that counterbalance of accessibility. Even if I have a fair amount of funds, I still don't want to sit in traffic for 4 hours. So then now you're trying to figure out how do you minimize or maximize how people are going to make those types of decisions, because it's really all just designed to get into the psychology of what is the value of your time, and then what would you charge in according to that value. I just wanted to kind of articulate that because I've lived in states that have the tolling, and it is an interesting dynamic that it's really just designed to change behavior. So.
Yeah, can I make a quick point on that? This is actually not common to other tolling. If anyone from federal WHA, what's that? Thank you. We need an acronym jar here too. There actually is not any tolling system in this country where the intent is to have people not drive. It's not a user fee. This is a do not use fee. It's uncommon. We don't do that in this country. New York City's trying to do it for the first time with congestion pricing, but this is very unusual to try to toll people to not drive, to force them to other modes of transportation. I think if it's the first time in the country we're doing this, I think it deserves a little more rigorous analysis is my suggestion. And it's just not something we do, not just in Utah, but the rest of the country.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure, go ahead, Ann.
Does the possible impending threat of a gondola translate into any of this? The county, you know, when they've been discussing transportation up the canyon, that is one thing that the county has been asked to analyze. Is that anywhere in any of this?
Sure. This is Wayne with WFRC. I'll take a stab at that and answering that. So you may recall and maybe not, but when the regional council approved the regional transportation plan last month, they included intent language with the approval of the plan that said something like, we want to prioritize implementation of phase 1 and phase 2 of the plan, and we want those phases evaluated before pursuing phase 3, which is the gondola, before pursuing phase 3 of the EIS of the environmental work. So from my perspective, there is not a tie. And in fact, it might be argued that it's pushing in the opposite direction. The approval of these phases, there's not a necessitated tie to implementation of the gondola.
Thank you. Those were the same priorities that the county council put forward. So thank you for that.
Could I
Thank you,
ask
Councilmember.
Kevin to state his full name and who he's with?
I sat next to you last meeting, Mike. Come on now. Kevin Cromar. I'm on the Utah Air Quality Board.
Okay.
Any other questions before? Oh, go ahead, Andrew.
I just want to ask if Josh has anything else he wants to say about this in response to what Kevin has said. You don't have to, Josh, but I just want to give you that opening if you did want to.
Sure. There was one thing I would like to point out. I think we all saw the excessive traffic or, delay last season and really in previous seasons. And to that point, there were over 40 hours in the last season where the canyon was open that we had in excess of 1,000 vehicles per hour. And that's really that threshold. And so by implementing tolling and giving people a good service transit system that's both reliable, frequent, and low cost, we can reduce the travel time for both people that are taking transit, but also in their private vehicles by making that switch. And again, really see the environmental benefits of a reduction in the number of cars in the canyon. And so that's all I wanted to add. Thank you for the opportunity, Andrew.
And Mr. Chair, may I offer one contextual comment?
Of course.
First, I want to say that yes, we at WFRC do know that Mr. Cromar loves to nerd out on the analysis, and we love him for it. We appreciate it. In all sincerity, we appreciate the detail he puts into this. I do think it's important for all of you, in part because, Kevin, you said that later, when we get to voting on this action on the TIP amendment, you're going to offer a motion. And if I understood you right, you're going to offer a motion before we would act on the overall TIP amendment. You would offer a motion to remove a portion of this project, just the tolling portion. Okay. So with that anticipating that coming, I do just want to note to all of you here, just to make sure we have clarity, 2 main points. The first point is that the tolling is one component of the overall EIS, the overall environmental impact statement that UDOT developed over the course of a multi-year period with extensive engagement and analysis. Now, I understand what Kevin is, I don't know enough about the analysis specifically to comment, but I understand that, Kevin, you're saying you think more analysis is warranted. I get that. I would just say that a lot of analysis has gone into this work already through the EIS process. The EIS was finalized, and the Wasatch Front Regional Council as an entity unanimously adopted the Regional Transportation Plan, which includes the entire EIS. So our body has said, essentially, let's move forward with what is in front of you today, this phase one improvements that Josh has described. And generally speaking, as Ben noted, there's been a lot of community interest in this project. There is very broad community support for moving forward with the approach that that Josh and Ben have described here as well. Having said that, Kevin is saying there should be more analysis. And I want to note that what Wayne has pointed out is that there will be more analysis as this goes forward. I don't think anybody knows with certainty the exact impact that the tolling is going to have on people's behavior, as Beth noted. Maybe it won't accomplish what the EIS wants it to. Maybe it'll do even more. We don't know yet. But as Wayne noted, the process that's been outlined, the phased approach, enables implementation of the tolling and analysis of that to see how it's working. It will be a dynamic process. So I just wanted to give that bit of context that a lot has gone into putting this approach together, and the tolling is a critical component of that overall package that will be implemented and evaluated as we go forward. So hopefully that's helpful context, and happy to answer any questions if anybody has them.
If that were to come out, do we know what the dollar amount is that we're pulling? I mean, it's 10 million. Okay, it was 5 and 5. Okay. Thanks. Okay.
I heard a number for access to the road of like $20 to $25, I thought. But it was alluded to that it would be a low cost opportunity for us to take a bus, but no number was approached on that. So I'd like to know what that might be.
Josh, I think that's probably a question for you.
Perfect. I figured it was, but I didn't want to jump in. So the fare value has not been subsidized or has not been determined as part of the EIS. That will be a separate decision. But we also recognize that if it isn't significantly less than the value of the toll, then really the tolling truly will be ineffective. So again, setting of the toll is outside of the EIS process. The $25 to $30 for the toll is a preliminary estimate. So again, I can't speak to what the fare to ride the bus will be. But again, if it isn't significantly less than the value of a toll, then that's a true statement that tolling will be ineffective at that point.
Okay. Thank you, Josh. Any other questions before we let Josh move on? No, we'll wait until we finish with his. Hey,
Andrew,
thank you.
can I, Mr. Chairman, can I mention something?
Sure, go ahead.
Sorry, let me trying to turn my camera on.
This
There we
is
go.
Ivan, just introduce yourself.
Yes, Ivan Marrero, Federal Highway Administration. I believe our agency was mentioned a few minutes ago when it came to tolling, and I just want to mention that as far as this project is concerned, right now, tolls are not allowed on public facilities unless there are certain conditions to be met. And for the project that we're talking about here, there would have to be a request for tolling under our value pricing program, at which time we would assess some of the items that were brought up about, the feasibility of the tolls. What effect, what impact are they really gonna sway people's driving habits and all of that. So so I guess what I'm getting at is whatever tolls or a system of tolling is put into place, it will be one that will be assessed by federal highways and make sure that it is something that will meet the goals of the project.
Thank you, Ivan. That helps a lot. We appreciate you being here with us for chiming in. Mr. Harvey, Commissioner.
I actually have a little bit of experience with tolling in Utah. I have property on Utah's only toll road up in Weber County. It's used primarily to save time, period. People pay to save time. The toll road is located on private property. Recently, that toll, after 23 years, was raised from $1 to $2. Huge uproar. But after 23 years, going from $1 to $2 caused quite a stir. But it didn't really deter many of the people from moving that way because they're doing it to save time. I don't know if that helps or hurts this conversation. Kevin, that's just been my personal experience and also watching. I'm also friends with the owner of the toll road. And I've asked him, has it hurt or helped you? And he says, we're down about 13% from $1 to $2, but his bottom line's quite up, so just a little helpful there.
Adams Avenue, right?
That's it.
Yeah,
So
that one is a use fee. So those dollars go to pay for the maintenance of the road, which the canyons are different. They're not going to use those dollars to maintain the road. It's to discourage people from driving. So it's different. It's a different type of.
I get it. I know the troll there. And so that's just, so if the Commissioner, if the toll was raised to $25, do you think people would still take it? Okay. Just questioning. Okay, Ben, let's move forward.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. So that brings us to sheet number 2. I think my clicker died. Oh, all right. So moving on to this particular table of projects, the first project we got is a project in West Valley, Kearns area that's out on 4700 South. And to talk quickly about this project, I'd like to take us back a few years, back to 2011, when this body approved the initial project. This project, when it was originally approved here, was a little bigger project. It was on 4700 South. It went from 4000 West to 5600 West. This project was to widen, reconstruct, put shoulders, curb gutter, and sidewalks on both sides of the road. And at the time, the estimated cost was $7.9 million plus. The funds were requested were what was recommended, and the project sat for a little while. After a few years, it came back after they had done some preliminary engineering, and it was necessary to request an additional $4.5 million. This body reviewed that information and approved that. Now the project estimated cost is $16.3 million. Then this particular project, it had a couple of unique situations. One, on the east end, it had a canal that it went over. And on the west end, it had a railroad that it went over. And both of those required a little different critter to make this project happen. So they requested, the project sponsor requested that if we would to pull out both ends of the project, first the railroad project, to give them time to get the agreements with the railroad so that it wouldn't hold up the whole project, because as we can tell, time has really increased the cost. The other one was they were ready to move on this canal. And so we were able to pull the canal portion out of the project. They built that, and now they're currently working on the facility there itself. Well, we also had to add another $7.5 million to the project. So we had a total project cost of 23.6+ million. And we are now going to talk about this end right here, the west end, the railroad. Kearns City has done an awesome job. They went out and they identified some additional funds. And those funds there's $2,000 or $2 million of federal consolidated appropriations funds of 2023. That $2 million that they are bringing back now with their commitment to take care of the west end of this project, which will go from 5400 west out to 5600 west. It'll put shoulders, bike lanes, curb gutter, and sidewalk on both sides of this facility. So in a sense, this is a new project coming in, but it was a commitment that they made to this body several years ago that they would come back with the funds to build this project. That was the reason for the little history on that. The next project we get to look at is Salt Lake County project, Cottonwood Canyon variable message signs. This has nothing to do with the prior Cottonwood Canyon project that we reviewed. In the process of trying to help improve the traffic up in the canyon, the department is proposing that we put 2 signs on SR, I believe that's 190. One for Big Cottonwood Canyon, one for Little Cottonwood Canyon. They're both on the southbound direction. And then a variable message sign on 9400 South, which is SR 109 at about 17th East. Those 2 signs then would allow the public to be well aware of what's happening in the canyons. What's the condition? What's the congestion? What's the closures, the crashes, the incidents, all of the information before they get to the canyon so that they can make a decision. And so that project is a new project. The department's requesting that we put a $3.2 million project on the program to put those, I just drew a blank here, the variable message signs. Better go fast if I'm losing my memory here. So the next project then is on I-215. I-215 over this past winter has had a rough go. Here at Indiana Avenue, as well as the interchange with I-80. The pavement has been and it wasn't that old a pavement, but the problems was that the maintenance crews were out putting patches on this facility. It's now necessary and time to come in and do a fix to the pavement. You can see the rebar sticking up by that gentleman's feet. So the request is that this project will reconstruct and repair the bridge decks. It's a $4 million project, and the department's asking that we include this project as part of the 2023-2028 TIP. The next project that we have is to replace 2 locally owned bridges in Salt Lake City. The first bridge is on 2nd South over the Jordan River. The second bridge is on 15 West, 650 North over the Jordan River. Looking at 200 South, the Jordan River Bridge, you can look underneath there and you can see the decay and how that bridge is falling apart. This is in a fair to poor condition bridge. The other bridge on 15 West, 650 North, you can see similar there as the bridge is beginning to decay with the exposure of the rebar and other supports under that facility. So both of these projects are on federal aid eligible facilities, which will require a local match from Salt Lake City. These projects will be funded with the Bridge Formula Program funds. Salt Lake City is willing to come up with a match. The total estimated cost is $14.4 million. And that's a new project coming into the TIP. The next project we have is in West Davis, Weber County, Davis, Weber counties. What this is a West Davis environmental study. Now, this is pretty exciting with the discussion we had from the last council meeting. So in this past legislative session, the 2023 legislative action directed UDOT to perform an environmental analysis from 1800 North to 5600 South or SR 97 to determine if it will be what the alternatives are for extending the West Davis Highway further north. That project is a new project that they're requesting that we put $5 million of that, and it'll come from the state transportation investment funds. Next project. Oh, that brings us to another table. We should have Tinkerbell ring her little bell. Maybe you're not old enough to remember that. Anyway, so Davis County Legacy Highway, SR.
Jordan is not old enough to remember that.
It's,
She hasn't been alive as long as Wayne's been here. So
this next project is on Legacy Highway. This goes from 5th South in West Bountiful Woods Cross up to where it connects to I-15. This particular project, if you look real close and you can see there, you can see that there's rutting on this particular facility. And that's because of the asphalt. And of course, we have a lot heavier traffic on this particular road at this time. It's the request from the department that we wrote a mill off. Oh, I was gonna, thanks, Ted. So let me back up. The intent for this project is to road a mill 1.5 inch off of the HMA, which is hot asphalt mix, or hot mix asphalt, and put it on with SMA with, but here's the difference on the two. So if you were to look at the SMA, which is the stone matrix, sorry, I didn't say that. And in the HMA, you can see the particles in there, how it helps build stability in the pavement. So here's some real core samples. And it kind of reminds me of Rice Krispie squares. You know, when you put too much marshmallow in it and they really can't hold any stability, but you add those with halves too much Rice Krispies and they're no good to eat. So there's kind of, depending on where you use the treatment on the road, there's pluses for both use. But the request here is to mill off 1.5 inches of HMA, replace it with 2 inches of SMA. What that'll do is help the pavement last longer and will reduce the rutting on this facility. This particular project was already in the tip. This is for some additional funds. Sorry, I put new project there. It's actually a change of scope is why the new one is on there. Is because there's also a safety improvement there where they're gonna put in the rumble strips to add to this facility. So we're bringing $7.2+ million to the project, bringing a total project cost of $16+ million. The next board modification is in Weber County. This is on 5600 South or SR 97. And this is the project that will not only improve the interchange on I-15, but it'll also widen 5600 South and bring to it a lot of benefits there. A separated facility for ped bridge and improvements to intersections and widening of the facility. Over the course of time, when UDOT originally did the environmental document, this particular road's been studied for quite a while. It was back in 2019 when those cost estimates were prepared. We all know what happened between then and now, and there was no way to anticipate some of the changes that took place as far as cost increase, supply and demand. So the request is to bring an additional $140 million to this project, bringing us a total project cost of $376,000 plus. So the construction inflation is a big one, $78 million. But the other really big one was the right-of-way inflation there. There's over 25+ million in the right-of-way alone. Additional materials and quantities is another 30 million. And then there's some additional work that needs to be done with the Davis-Weber Canal, Central Canal, as the work that'll be contributing to there, and that's an additional 7 million. So the request is for additional funds so that this project can move forward. The next project we have is here in Salt Lake. This is on the 3 interchange called the Bangerter 3, 6200 South, 104 South, 126 South. You might recall back on the 6200 South, there was a large viaduct that had to be relocated. I just wanted to bring this up again for you when we showed this initially. Look at the size of the pipes, and you can see 2 buses there in the roadway. There's some cars that could drive right down the pipe without a problem, but that bus is a pretty good competitor to the diameter of the pipes. But an amazing amount of work to bring these intersections to an interchange all along the Bangerter. An amazing project that's been going on. The request is for an additional $1.6 million to cover the overruns on right-of-way, on the right-of-way acquisition costs. So the 1.6 plus million to this project would bring in the total project cost to 234.6 million. The next project is in the front runner Point of the Mountain. This is another project that in this past legislative session, we were the benefactors of the legislators telling the department that they needed to identify and construct the front runner. Sorry, I almost forgot there. I remembered, but it was, it's the pressure. The front runner train here, the new stations, as well as the associated double tracking. So they directed you to, that they were to program 200 million for this particular project. The total cost for this project is 400 million, but this 2 million or 200 million will enable them to initiate and begin through the process moving forward. That brings us to our last table, and it only has 2 projects on it. The first project is in Farmington. You might recall looking at this picture here back in 2017. We reviewed this on SR 106 or Main Street, and this was for the east side to put shoulder curb gutter and sidewalk. The next year they came and they requested for the west side on that same facility, the same lengths. This body recommended to the regional council the requested amounts. That amount gave us a total federal amount. Sorry, I should have walked through what the facility looks like here. Trying to get to the punchline. So we have a total federal amount of $3.9 million. We have a local match of 368,000. That gives us a total of $4.2+ million on this project. Current engineer's estimate is $8 million on the project. They're requesting an additional $3 million, and then Farmington City will come up with the shortfall on that project, bringing about another $700,000-800,000 to the project. Some of the reasons for the cost increase, as well as everything that we're aware of, but there's some significant grade issues from the existing asphalt to the existing homes. There's also 51 temporary right-of-way easements that need to be purchased. Or not easements, but temporary right-of-way that need to be purchased. There's the tying in of the driveways. They're more complicated and extensive because of the geometry of the road. The existing drainage, where there is some drainage, actually drops into an old irrigation system, which is against the law now. And so they have to design and install a new storm drain and 3 storm drain outfalls. And then, of course, the inflation of construction cost and materials. So the request from Farmington City is $3 million in the urban SDP funds for the Ogden-Layton urban area. The next project that we had to review is also a request from Farmington City. This is a project on Commerce Drive. Commerce Drive is a brand new construction from Burke Lane to 950 North. This will construct a 5-lane road connecting Park Lane interchange to the I-15 interchange there at Shepherd Lane. The new West Davis corridor interchange will be there at 950 North. It'll construct the pavement, the curb gutter and sidewalk, ADA crossings, utility lines, and the right-of-way. This project estimated at the time was 8.1+ million. They requested from us 7.5+ million. This body, because of what we had available, we recommended 3 million at the time. Farmington City has gone to work looking for additional funds for all of their projects. The funds that they were able to identify and secure are funds that would be available for this project. So they have the funds to build this project. And so Farmington City is requesting that they withdraw this project from the program so it doesn't federalize their project. And so that $3 million would return back to the urban STP pot. That is all of the board mods.
Wow. That was a lot. Thank you, Ben. Questions for Ben before we move on to motions on this? Okay, so Kevin mentioned that he's got a motion to, I'll let you make the motion to remove the tolling. And so let's get that motion out of the way.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry for the disruption. And thank you, Josh, for answering the questions. I really appreciate that. Real quickly before I make the motion, the reason I'm making the motion is there are a lot of unknowns. I understand there's more analysis, but when you put something in the tip, the project kind of becomes real. It's kind of a line of demarcation in some ways. And it's the first toll of its kind in the whole country. It's the most expensive toll in the whole country on a public road at $25 to $30. This is a big deal. I just think we should get those unknowns figured out before we move forward. With that said, I make a motion that we remove, is there a project number, project name? Yeah, from the proposed Big Cottonwood, Little Cottonwood project, the 5 million of tolling equipment from Little Cottonwood Canyon and 5 million from the Big Cottonwood Canyon. Leave everything else unchanged.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion on that? I can tell you on my end, I really enjoyed what you and appreciate what you had done there. Given that it would contradict with our just recently approved RTP as it built it into there, I wouldn't be able to support this. That and then hearing from Ivan from Federal Highways explaining the process that still has to go through for Federal Highways to sign off on this, I couldn't support this.
Yeah, and this is Rob Daly. I'd just like to chime in and because I actually seconded the motion from Mayor Wilson as it related to the gondola. And I think the bottom line here, and I think Andrew did a good job of explaining it, and as well as Mayor Silvestrini, is look, it seems to me like when the EIS was given to UDOT, that WFRC's hands are tied in terms of what we can do based on the UDOT recommendation. And this falls under the same category as the gondola being inserted into phase 3 and our ability to bifurcate it. I think that's unfortunate, but it seems to me like that's the reality. So I think we just have to let it go forward and let the process move forward and see what happens with regard to tolling and whether it has the anticipated effect in terms of traffic reduction.
Thank you, Rob. Okay, if there's no further discussion on this motion, yeah, no, go ahead. Yeah. Oh, I was just going to do it. Yeah. That was my plan there. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Hey,
Okay, I'll rule the nays have that on that one. Then we need a motion to, in regards to the board modifications to the 2023-2028 tip that Ben has just so illustriously explained to us.
Make a motion to approve.
Second with comment.
Okay,
I've sat here for 6 going on 7 years now, and I've loved Kevin's comments. He gets into the weeds and he's smart, and I really respect you for that. I would like, though, I know there's been a lot of extensive research, and with all due respect with what Mayor Daly said, we're kind of pigeonholed into some of those, thanks, Mark, some of those things. But I would like some of that information, the studies that have taken place, the extensive studies as was presented that have taken place, to have that for the whole board to be able to review, so that we don't have any, we can be a little more educated on this. If we could just get that available to us, that would be good.
May I?
Thank you.
you bet.
Yeah, Commissioner Harvey, we would be happy, WFRC would be more than happy to work with UDOT to assemble some information related to, well, related to tolling specifically, related to anything you're ever interested in this case specifically related to the tolling, and provide that to you. We'd be happy to do that.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hey,
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, that passes. We will move on, and Ben, it's your turn again.
Thank you. Wow. 2 in a row, 3. Well, this is 4C. This is an exciting opportunity that we have now. We'll present to this body the draft tip and the conformity analysis so that we can get your recommendations to go out for public review and comment. So take just a minute. There we go. All right. So first and foremost, in your meeting materials and what we will present to the public, and anyone else will have it available, but there is a table that will have the tables that Wasatch Front Regional Council has specific responsibility to take the lead in coordinating and programming and managing the projects. We work closely with our partners at UDOT and the UTA and the local governments, those who have the projects, but this, when we do the full tip, we combine all the tables together, but we can keep them separate here for the draft. So this particular table will have our programs. Then we have a table that has all the other federal and state funded projects. And that's in this particular table, and that is a list of about 80+ pages of projects. Then we have a list of the transit administered, those projects the UTA takes the lead in coordinating the programming of. And then we also have the air conformity or the air quality memorandum. And these documents are made available for all of the public to review and understand. It's our intent then that we go out for public review and comment. We're meeting today on the 15th of June. We would like to go out for public review and comment on the 24th of June, and that'll conclude on the 29th of July. Now, just for something that's real cool, I was going to save this for another meeting, but this is pretty cool. So this is the 24-29 tip, right? We're going out for public comment from the 24th to the 29th. Isn't that cool? All right. Well, I was pretty excited. So on the 11th, we have an open house. That'll be an open house here in the Salt Lake area. And then on the 13th, we have an open house, and that'll be an open house up in the Ogden-Layton area, so that we can try to meet with as many and all who would like to talk about the projects or explain projects, or talk about the tip. Then on the 3rd of August, Thursday, we'll go back to our technical advisory committees and take all of that information that we receive and get their review, and they make a recommendation back to Transcom so that you're able to meet on the 17th and review that information, understand what's there, and make the recommendation to the regional council that when they meet on the 24th, they can approve the 24-29 transportation improvement program. That following Monday, we combine our information with the other MPOs and the state on a statewide transportation improvement program in that week. And then that goes to Federal Highway and Federal Transit during the month of September, and they review all of the information. Then come October 2nd, hopefully we are able to function under the brand new tip, the 24-29 Transportation Improvement Program. Something else just to think about, here in August, we start the whole process all over again. So it's just an exciting time. So here's what you ought to, if you go onto our website, www.wfrc.org, and you go into the Transportation Improvement Program, there's also a resource that's very helpful. It's amazing. It's an interactive map. It'll list the projects in the tip where you can go in, click on a project, zero down, get some of the information on it, leave a comment, and understand more of what's out there. It'll have the STP projects that this body recommended, reviewed and recommended in detail. You'll recall that Far West project there on 3300 North, 2.4 million you recommended for that project to move forward. Incidentally, we had the same amount. I had to double check twice, so I didn't just copy numbers. $2.4 million project in the West Valley Magna area on the 7200 West. This is in addition to some other funds they had to reconstruct that facility. Then it'll also include all of the CMAQ projects that this body recommended and reviewed. Remember the electric chargers, the green bikes, the intersection improvements. Then it'll also include the TAP projects, both in the Salt Lake and in the Ogden urban areas. You'll recall this, the Centerville City, the Porter Lane Trail there over at Ditch, as well as the project there in Harriman, which is a bike lane installation on 134 South to Mount View. Then it'll have the CRP programs, the carbon reduction program. Remember this is a brand new program. You'll recall the projects that you reviewed here. There's this offset intersection. It'll construct a roundabout in this intersection. And then we had a project here in the Salt Lake area in Holiday for the signal optimization enhancements. So all of these projects plus other capacity projects. Look at that cool tractor. Have you ever wanted to drive a tractor anyway? So you got all of those TIF projects. Those are the large capacity projects. Andrea talked about them earlier. This is a picture of the bridge over the West Davis or over the freeway on the West Davis. Then we have the rehab and the maintenance type of projects that are going on. We have the safety and the ITS improvements that are happening along the Wasatch Front. We have transit operations and maintenance. And then we have our pedestrian and our bicycle type projects that are happening. These are the projects that the public will have an opportunity to review and make a comment on. Not only the new projects that were recommended, but the projects that have been on the tip for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Those are the projects that are part of the tip. So make a note of this one. So if you're sitting home wondering what you're gonna do tonight or this weekend, don't watch some movie like that. Click on www. Okay. And all of a sudden, bingo, the tip pops up. The interactive map, can you imagine how your loved ones are gonna love it? They're gonna think this is so cool. Anyway, our request now is that we take the 2024 tip, 2029 tip out, and I switched the date there on this one. Let's just go back to the movie. Pretend that one didn't exist. We need a recommendation, Chair.
Yes. Can we have a motion to release the draft of the 2024-2029 tip and air quality conformity analysis for public comment?
So moved.
Second,
We have a motion and a second. Did you guys get who that was?
Kevin,
Okay.
second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? I didn't think so. Okay, well thank you, Ben. We're gonna let you sit down now.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
I think that everyone should report back and let everyone know how great the movie was this weekend.
If Ben had have said he was providing popcorn, I would have said, I'm there.
I
I
thought
can
he said
bring some.
Rice
I got the
Krispie.
microwave stuff over in the office.
Oh, we love you, Ben. Okay, item number 5 is our air quality state implementation plan, the ozone status and potential conformity implications. And I'd like to welcome Ryan Bars. He's an environmental scientist with the State Division of Air Quality. He's going to share with us some information about the state implementation of the plan for ozone. And he'll be followed by Wayne Benyon.
There we go. Thank you so much. As was said, my name is Ryan Bars. I'm an environmental scientist with the Utah Division of Air Quality. I know Director Byrd had wanted to be here today, but he is out of the country on National Guard duty. So I will do my best to fill in, but those are awfully big shoes to attempt to fill.
That means he's with my son.
Oh, excellent. And I do also want to note, I'm going to be focusing mostly on the state implementation plan side of things. As was mentioned, Wayne will be up here afterwards talking about how this is potentially going to impact some of the transportation conformity side of things. So if there are detailed questions about that, I may punt until after Wayne has a chance to talk, but I will do my best to answer questions as I can, as well as any direct questions about the state implementation plan as it stands. Anytime I'm asked to talk about our SIP, I always like to do a quick overview of ozone. Of course, there is a tremendous amount of local knowledge about our wintertime fine particulate matter problem. Our summertime ozone is a little less well known, so I always like to start by kind of the basics. You know, ozone is our summertime pollutant here in the Northern Wasatch Front, and it's not directly emitted, rather is informed in the atmosphere when emissions of nitrogen oxides and volatile organic compounds come together in the presence of sunlight and heat, and that forms ozone in the atmosphere. Now, ozone is a very, very powerful oxidant. It really wants to react with anything it comes into contact with, and that of course includes the lining of our lungs. So as we inhale ozone, it causes inflammation and burning of the lining of the lungs, which leads to wheezing and shortness of breath. And this is particularly problematic for individuals with pre-existing respiratory conditions like asthma or COPD. Now, because there is direct human health impacts from ozone, it is regulated by the Clean Air Act as a national ambient air quality standard. And as a result, the state is required to make sure that concentrations stay below those thresholds. The current standard is set at 70 parts per billion. Data collected from our most recent summers, 3 most recent summers, have the Northern Wasatch Front non-attainment area, which is Salt Lake, Davis, Weber, and Tooele counties. That design value is currently at 79 parts per billion. So we're well above the current standard, and we have quite a bit of work to do before we get below that standard or that threshold at 70 parts per billion. Now, as a result of this non-attainment status, we are required to implement or submit a state implementation plan. There is one plan for each successive non-attainment designation. So I'm today specifically talking about our moderate non-attainment SIP, but in the future, you'll be hearing a lot about our serious SIP planning as well. And SIPs are really these kind of overarching documents that really describe everything that the state is attempting to do to reduce those precursor emissions that result in the formation of ozone. So a couple big takeaways from our current state implementation plan. One of the big requirements is what we call reasonable further progress, or RFP. And this is a requirement of reducing emissions in the non-attainment area by 15% relative to the baseline year of 2017. The SIP was due in January of 2023. We're out for public comment now, so we're a little behind schedule, but we're still making good progress on it. And the attainment year, when we need to hit that 70 parts per billion standard, is 2024. If we fail to attain the standard by that attainment date, we will be redesignated to serious. Given our current design value of 79, we know we're headed that direction. So the current SIP, as I mentioned before, is out for public comment now. It was proposed for public comment at the Utah Division or the Utah Air Quality Board on April 5th. Public comment runs from June 1st to July 17th. After public comment period closes, we will consider all comments that are submitted in written form. We'll also draft responses to that, include all that in the final document as part of the record, which will be submitted to the board and proposed for final adoption at the September 6th Air Quality Board meeting. And then our plan is to package everything, turn it around, and hopefully submit it to EPA for final adoption in September of 2023. Quick note on timing beyond that, EPA generally does have 12 months to act on each individual portion of the SIP once we submit it. So expect to see movement at the federal level within the 12 calendar months following that September submission. The SIP can be viewed in its entirety currently at our webpage. It's about 160 pages long, 167 or so, give or take. Fairly dense document. And within there are 9 statutory obligations that the state individually addresses. I'm obviously not going to talk about all 9 of our chapters. In fact, I think there's 12 chapters. Kevin could probably correct me on that. But the 2 that I really want to spend some time focusing on for today is first that RFP, which I mentioned earlier, our 15% VOC emission reduction requirement, as well as our motor vehicle emission budget, which of course is the budget that is set. It's kind of the cap for mobile emissions within the non-attainment area that has direct ties into the reasonable further progress requirement. And to be blunt, just to go ahead and pull the Band-Aid off, the current plan does not fully fulfill our RFP requirement. So the 15% requirement works out to being about 14 tons per day of VOC emissions that the state is obligated to reduce throughout the non-attainment area. This SIP currently accounts for 3.7 tons per day of emissions reductions. So we're capturing about 4% of our total requirement. That remaining 10 or so tons per day of emissions reductions is an ongoing obligation for the state to fulfill. That does not go away when we're redesignated. We are actively working on identifying and implementing strategies to fulfill that full requirement, but it's an incredibly difficult task at this point because the state has done such a phenomenal job of reducing precursor emissions through our PM2.5 work previously. The reality is at this point, with all the work that was done to reduce PM2.5 concentrations during the wintertime, there's not a lot of readily available, easily implementable emissions reduction strategies for us to use to fulfill that remaining 10%. We are working on it, but it's going to be a very, very significant challenge. Now, the reason why we're bringing this to everybody's attention today, as I mentioned, we have direct ties to the motor vehicle emission budget. So when the EPA disapproves our reasonable further progress, which they almost certainly will, given that we don't fulfill it, it will mean that the motor vehicle emission budget that is included within that SIP will not be approvable as well, which means the Northern Wasatch Front and the 4 counties within it will not have a budget to demonstrate transportation conformity against. Again, we're expecting action in about a year from the time it's submitted, and the transportation challenges pretty much kick in immediately upon that disapproval. I don't want to finish everything on this total doom and gloom, and this is my last slide. So I do want to finish by noting that we really are working on this. In fact, we'll be rolling out some additional emission reduction strategies as early as next July, but it is going to be a very significant challenge, and there's going to be some hard decisions in the near future as we work towards fulfilling that 10% and hopefully mitigating some of the worst kind of impacts and consequences of this. So with that, I'll take any questions that I can answer, or I'll pass it off to Wayne.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
You know, we're lucky to have people like Ryan, just like Wayne's been here 30 years. Ryan hasn't hit 30 years yet, but he's a tremendous resource for the state. Just put a fine point on it. It's very rare for states to lose transportation dollars. Does not happen very often. But if you gave me 4-to-1 odds, we're going to lose transportation dollars. This is very serious for the state. I think the message for all of us, you're not air quality planners, but as they roll out plans, maybe rethink any knee-jerk reactions about why we're doing this. We will lose transportation dollars if we don't take serious action. I think that's the message for us today.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Ryan. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And
Can I have a question, Mr. Chair?
Oh, yes, you can, Mr. Harvey.
I would just like to have just a little, just a brief. I know that there's been a lot of talk about the influence of overseas manufacturing on our little area right here. China, for instance, and California blowing into our area, which is causing us a significant amount. But how, can you just comment on any of that? We keep doing all that we can do, and yet there seems to be overabundance of nothing we can do from our neighbors. I'd like to hear a little comment.
Yeah, this is a good point, and our SIP actually dives quite a bit into detail about the contributions from other states as well as international emissions. And you're right, there are certainly contributions there. Of course, we do still have quite a bit of exceedances of the ozone standard based upon local emissions as well. And ultimately, at the end of the day, where we determine compliance is based upon whether or not our monitor is showing below 70 parts per billion. We are on the hook to getting our concentrations down to that level. And the EPA doesn't give us a lot of deference regardless of where those emissions are coming from.
Can I ask a question?
Well,
yes, go right ahead.
This is Kip. I wasn't sure if you could hear me. I'm calling from my car. So Ryan, you mentioned that the SIP would moderate. We're expecting that it won't be approved, and we won't have an approved motor vehicle emission budget. In the interim, will we still be able to use the 2007 maintenance plan budgets from the ozone maintenance plan for Salt Lake and Davis County?
Yes, Kip, that's a great question. And that budget will be viable until EPA acts on the disapproval. So up until that point, that budget would still be what would be used for conformity for ozone.
Okay, thanks again.
Thank you.
Wayne?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So we'll talk about, and Ryan alluded to this, I'll try and give a bit more detail on the transportation implications related to the status of the ozone SIP. And there are some nuances to what I'm going to say. I'll just try and hit the main points for sake of time. Let's see here. All right. So as Ryan talked about, the state's role, or the Division of Air Quality's role, is to demonstrate how they're going to attain the national standard in regard to precursor pollutants that form ozone. WFRC's role, on the other hand, is to demonstrate that the planned transportation projects over the next 30 years are going to conform or be within those limits that are set in the SIP. So that's the distinction between the state's role and WFRC's role. And so, and that's why we approve a conformity determination or analysis for both the RTP and the TIP, is because we've got to show how our transportation plans and programs conform to those budgets that are established in the state implementation plan. And as Ryan pointed out, the likely scenario is that within a year from the time they submit the ozone SIP, EPA is going to be disapproving that SIP and any motor vehicle emission budgets. Excuse me. When that disapproval occurs, and EPA has said they will let us know ahead of time before they are going to disapprove that SIP, but most likely time scenario is approximately September 24. But when they disapprove that SIP, a conformity freeze, or in other words, we cannot conduct a new conformity regional emissions analysis. The current conformity analysis is frozen, and we can't amend projects into the TIP or into the plan, regionally significant projects that require a new conformity analysis. And so at that point, likely scenario is that September 24, only certain transportation projects are going to be able to proceed. Either those that are in the first 4 years of the TIP and in phase 1 of the RTP, or those that are exempt from conformity requirements, which are projects like safety and operations and maintenance and many transit projects, not major transit expansion, but many other types of transit projects are exempt. So and the length of the conformity freeze is for 2 years. So from the time of the SIP disapproval, the likely time of the SIP disapproval, there will be 2 years when only those projects in the first 4 years of the TIP and the plan can move forward, unless they're exempt projects. And the only thing that, so after 2 years, transportation have a conformity freeze, then we move to sanctions are in place or a lapse. And the only way to avoid that is if the state is able to prepare a serious SIP or a SIP based on the new non-attainment designation of serious that Ryan mentioned, And EPA approves that, and then the regional council and staff make a new conformity determination if EPA approves that serious state implementation plan. So bottom line, our recommendation is that any amendments, any major highway, major transit projects that you want to see get under construction, you need to get those amended into the RTP and the TIP before this conformity freeze happens. So we anticipate that over the next year plus, it would be desirable to make sure you've got everything as far as major highway and transit capacity projects into the RTP and the TIP prior to that conformity freeze.
Yeah, go ahead.
Wayne, I'm just curious. You mentioned that some transit projects are exempt from this conformity freeze. But can I just ask you, and if you don't know that, I'm sure we can research it out, but does that include the strategic double tracking, or because that's already in the phase, is that, how does that line up?
Right. Excellent question. Thank you. And so that is the type of major transit capacity expansion that we want to make sure is in the RTP and the TIP prior to that freeze. So it's not exempt. The strategic double tracking is not exempt.
From a funding standpoint, what do we lose? What does that equate to? I mean, obviously, we know what it's going to do to the projects. That's absolutely devastating.
Right.
What's it do to funding?
My understanding is that exempt projects can continue to be funded, as well as projects that are either not regionally significant or not regionally significant and not funded with federal dollars. So state projects that are regionally significant, which is principal arterials and above, freeways and major surface streets, cannot go forward even if they have state funding.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's, yeah, I mean, that's just huge. So. Okay. Thank you, Wayne, for the doom and gloom presentation. Ryan, we appreciate yours as well. And there was no ice cream or cookies or popcorn to go with this. That little sugar-free brownie back there did not help, but.
Mayor?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes.
Excuse me, sorry, this is Andrew, now joining from the road. And I just wanted to offer one clarifying comment. You asked the question, what funds would be lost? And Wayne can correct me if I'm wrong, but the answer is we're not at risk of losing federal funding. It's not like federal funding that would have otherwise come to our region would go away, or state funding or any other funding would go away. We would have potentially have severe restrictions on how that money is used. But it would it could only be used for those limited purposes, or otherwise it would sort of sit there. But we would not actually lose the money. Now, I suppose there's a scenario where ultimately the money doesn't get spent, and through a federal reallocation process, the money is taken back. Automatic loss of federal funding. It's rather a restriction on the use of the funds. Wayne, am I correct?
I believe that's basically a correct understanding. Jennifer with Federal Highway, or Ivan, if he's still on, can correct us if we're mistaken, but.
What Andrew explained is correct. There is a danger of some of the funds that lapse after 4 years. If if they don't get spent within that 4-year window, they will lapse. So those would be the ones that I would say would be in danger.
Thank you, Andrew, for that clarification as well. I appreciate that. Let's move on to a more cheerful topic. Let's like to welcome Dan Adams, the Communications Manager for the I-15 EIS team, who's going to discuss the environmental study that's happening for the I-15 corridor from South Davis County into Salt Lake City.
Hello, everyone. Let me share my screen here for a second. Yeah, I would much rather have gone after Ben Withridge. He's always so positive and cheerful. Now I feel a lot of pressure to be to be the positive guy. All right. I'm just going to do a real quick update on the I-15 EIS from Farmington Salt Lake. Hopefully, if you can see my screen there, we've been working on this EIS for about 18 months. Our last big milestone was the alternatives phase, which happened in November. We had a 60-day public comment period from November 10th to January 13th and received about 2,800 comments, really good informative comments. As you all probably know, this EIS it kind of came to be because of three things. There was aged bridges and infrastructure in the corridor, in the 60-mile corridor. And there was also the road surface needed to be replaced. And there were some issues with drainage. And so those three things kind of helped drive this environmental study, this EIS. And so that's what we've been working on since then. If you go to the website, which I encourage you all to do at i15eis.udot.utah.gov, our most recent thing here has been the release of the screening report, which takes a lot of some of the basic information that tied to the alternatives that we worked on there at the end of the year, and take some of that level 1 and level 2 screening to evaluate those alternatives. And so that screening report just came out here a few weeks ago on the website, and we welcome you to go and take a look at that. We're now sharpening the pencils and doing more technical work that will then lead to the draft EIS coming out this fall. And then we'll look to go for a final EIS in the spring of 24. And so that is where we're at.
Thank you, Dan.
You're welcome.
Anybody have any questions for Dan? Well, you got off easy, just saying, you know.
That's why I like it.
Oh, Commissioner Holbrook has a question.
All right.
Just when you thought you'd escaped. I'm just making a comment. I just wanted to thank UDOT and their engineers and their team for working with us to do some of the strategic double tracking, especially near Shepherd Lane. I think that is incredibly helpful. I know it's not part of this technically, but the discussions further into Centerville also similar. And it's been really helpful to have those discussions. So thank you.
You bet.
Thanks again, Dan. Well, that brings us to the end of our meeting. We just need we appreciate everyone being here and taking the time online. Thanks for showing your faces. We need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody.